everybody. Welcome to the August 23rd Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee today. And we have Ken Slather as a guest, and he'll be doing a presentation. So, hi, Ken. Sorry to put you on the spot to unmute.
That's all right. Hi. Hello.
Let's see. First off, let's look over our agenda here. And I don't see that we have any public comment. Is that correct, Katrina? Okay. Any changes to the agenda from any members? Okay. How about let's go on to minutes approval from July 26th. Would somebody like to move them? Deborah, seconded by Dave. All in favor, or any comments on minutes? And all in favor of approving the minutes? That's unanimous. Thank you, everybody. And then we have County Administrator's report. Amy, do you have anything for us today?
I don't have a lot for you. We are in the midst of budget, as you all know, working through that. At the same time, we're also still managing that COVID response. So things are definitely busy here, but I don't have anything that in regards to peak today.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So let's go on. Let's see, next is the chair's report. I wanted to ask folks about rescheduling the December committee meeting, but if that's okay, so just, well, it looks like people are bringing up their calendars. Okay, so Katrina, will you be able to help us with that if we look at some dates? The previous date, I believe, was going to be
the previous Monday is the 20th.
Pardon me?
The previous Monday is the 20th.
Okay.
Is there a conflict with?
Yes.
On the 20th is HHS, but we do request that if we go with a meeting in December, that it be before the 21st, which is the last legislature meeting.
Great, so that was, thank you for bringing that up. Yes, I talked to Kathy Colbert about that. So that way, if we have any resolutions, that they could get passed before the end of the year and not go over into the next year, especially since some of them are financial at the end of the year.
How about Wednesday the 15th? Would that work?
ATD that morning.
Well, but we could have a meeting in the afternoon, which would be my preference anyway, because everyone knows what a morning person I am. Not.
So on the 15th, you're saying, but that's HED, is at 9:30. How about in the afternoon on the 15th?
That works for me.
Which one?
So 1:30 to 3:30? Can we do that?
That would,
Right.
okay, so 1:30 on December 15th, and that'll be a Wednesday. Okay. I had some date preferences from Dan, but I'll check those before the end of the meeting, make sure that's okay. Alrighty, and then we're on to Ken already. So Ken, we received your presentation. I appreciate you getting that to us. I know it sounds like you were really busy last week, working 75 hours at least before Friday was over. So we appreciate you getting that in there. And so to let folks know, if they didn't hear me say this before, what we were thinking as far as for the expanded budget meetings, are there any departments or organizations that could report to us directly to our committees? So I asked Ken, just as an experiment, I told him I didn't know for sure if he reported to us, he wouldn't have to report to the full legislature, but even if he had to report twice, that gives us more time to digest things and possibly less questions or give Ken maybe some more time to look into things. So that's kind of where, what my thinking on was that. So I appreciate you, Ken, doing a lot of work to try and get this for us today. Did you want to say anything before you started your presentation?
No, except to say thanks very much for giving me the opportunity to do this. I've got lots of paper here, so I can take down any notes if people have them. And then, of course, if if questions come up after the fact, I'll do my best to answer them any way I can.
All right, thank you very much. You have the floor, and if you could share your screen when you're ready.
I will do that. All right. I'm assuming you can see that there.
Yeah.
Okay.
It looks good.
All right. So let's see. Let's make sure that okay. All right. Apologies. So there's a couple of things that I will point out. There's errors in these next two slides, which I will try to explain. They're somewhat material, but I hope they won't be too confusing. But to start with, I thought it would be helpful to give you a sense of the since a significant portion of the OTRs that I'm doing are related to the county target and what we do with the money. I thought it'd be helpful for you to get a sense of what our the appropriation from the county looks like compared to the overall budget for the organization. And so this 2003 is actually the year that I started, and at that time the appropriation was $588,000. And then in 2020, I think the number is 600 was originally 752, and it got cut, which we'll show you in a minute. Now the error in this slide is that, and I didn't notice this until just a few minutes ago when I was looking at these slides again. The error is that the green is what I neglected to do when I had this in Excel is I had this green as the total amount of our total revenue, and the yellow is the county appropriation. But what I failed to do, this shouldn't have been added. This green is actually the total amount of the revenue, which in 2020 was about $8 million. And then, and out of that $8 million, about originally about 700,000 of that was the county appropriation. So does that make sense? What I've done essentially is it looks like I've added $750,000 roughly to our total revenue. Our total revenue was about 8 million, not 8,750,000. And this number is correct. So the yellow is correct. It's just that what's happened is the yellow got added to the green to make the final number, and it should not have been. It should have been a portion of it. So I apologize for that. But you can see the underlying message is that the appropriation was a huge percentage of our overall revenue back in 2003, and it's still a very important piece. I want to underscore that it is extremely important. It is the piece that makes it much easier for us to raise other funds, and without it, we basically could not function. But it's been something that we've been able to actually use the county appropriation to leverage a lot more money going forward.
Can we ask questions as we go along, Ken? Is that all right with you?
That's fine by me, whatever works for you.
Yeah, it's my understanding from some of the conversations that you and I have had with Kelles that the county's contribution goes primarily to your basic operating budget, where
Right here.
your total budget includes a lot of grant funding for projects.
Correct.
So do you have just
a ballpark idea of how much of your budget is actually operating expenses and how much are these special grants and programs?
Yeah, that's his next slide.
Oh, okay, great.
In fact, and I made the same mistake here. So as I did in the last slide. So in 2020, our operating budget was $1.4 million. Okay, so that green here, if I was to get rid of this yellow, the green would be $1.4 million. I mean, the total operations budget for the year was $1.4 million. The county gave us, I think, well, we can take a look. The next slide has that number, or 2 slides down has that number. The county gave us in 2020, they gave us $658,000 for our appropriation. Okay, so about half of our operating budget in 2020 came from the county. In 2003, that number was even larger. That's why I keep getting back to this. The county appropriation is a very important piece of our operating budget. In this year, in 2003, it was $588,000 out of the total of about $760,000 in 2003. So again, $588,000 out of $760 in 2003, and here about $650,000 out of $1.4 million. So roughly 45%. And here it was more than 2/3 of our operating budget was from the county appropriation. Okay. Does that answer your question, Deb?
Yes, thanks, Ken.
All right. So the reverse is, what's the impact of CCE on the county budget? And our total budget in 20, I don't have the data yet for 20, I didn't collect it in 2019 and I am collecting it now for 2020. So this slide, you'll see it again in my September presentation to the legislature. It'll just be updated to 2020. But in 2018, our total budget was about $7 million. And as I indicated, in that year, we leveraged about $9 for each dollar of appropriation. And out of that, $4.5 million was brought in from outside the county. So we, already just by bringing in money from outside the county, we contribute to the county's economy. The second are the programs themselves actually brought in additional revenue to the county government's budget and reduced expenses in the budget. And so in 2018, it was $43,000 that we brought in for revenue to the county's budget. These are in the form of sales taxes, and basically with sales taxes. And then we reduced expenses by $248,000, which meant the net cost to the county in 2018 of our entire, the amount in 2018 was about $760 or I don't know, $800,000 roughly. The net cost to the county was $530,000. Any questions about that? So, and I will, in the past, I've basically provided you with tables and footnotes for how we identify what the expenses are that have been reduced or what the revenues are that are generated, and that'll be provided to you again in September. So moving on to the over target request for 2022. The first one that we're looking at is essentially to address the reductions that we've had, because of COVID-19. And so in 2019, the target appropriation for us was $738,221, and that's what we got. 2019, it went up. There was 2% increase, the 2% COLA, went up to 752. Of course, we had to get the reduction. It brought it back down to 658,862, which was a reduction of 94,000, which we were able to address in 2020 through a PPP loan. In 2021, as was, as we were told and we fully expected, and we certainly understand, the target was 662, which was 90,000 less than the target in 2020. And we addressed it, we've been addressing it by basically by having hiring freezes and pay freezes and the use of our reserves. So that's how we've addressed this, the operating expense or the operating budget deficit, or by basically by dealing with the reduction in the county funding of 90,000. We've dealt with it by basically having, we've not hired 2 positions, and we've had pay for, we didn't increase anybody's pay in 2021. And again, that's not any different than many other people. So we certainly understand the situation everybody was in. In 2022, that's where we don't know what we're going to do. So we're expecting, basically the county had told us it'll be the same target as last year. Again, another $90,000 deficit. We do need to hire, and clearly, I think everybody understands, inflation has been certainly is present now, and we do need to somehow address that question. So what we've proposed is to a 60,000. We asked for an over target request of $60,000 to contribute to this $90,000 deficit. We'll come up with the rest, but what we'd like to do is to be able to make those hires and be able to increase people's pay. And if we can get the $60,000 appropriation or the over target request, our first priority, $60,000 added to target, we can come up with the rest to deal with this issue in 2022. So that's what our first.
Would that be a multi-year over target?
It'd be a target request. So it would go basically back in, it would basically be a reinstatement of $60,000 into target.
Would it be one year?
OTR, it's a target increase, is what you're asking for.
Well, it is an OT, yeah, it's a target increase, but it's still in the nomenclature, it's still called an OTR because it's not in the current target, and so they're asking to add it to.
Okay.
Now we did, when we first submitted this.
There's one more question right now.
Okay.
Hi, Ken. Let's see, what was my question? So in terms of that discrepancy, or, that loss that you guys are taking because of the, sorry, my brain is a little bit foggy today. Anyway, I know that the board has also talked about raising the PSF.
Yes.
And which, as I think folks may or may not remember, is a sort of overhead charge that programs are charged when they operate through CCE. And the board has talked about in the past about raising this. I guess I feel like I may have missed a board meeting or two, but is that still part of the conversation? Yes.
Yeah, in fact, that'll be coming to the Finance Committee at next week's meeting. So for us, I mean, just for everybody else, the background, we've done the calculations of what our administrative and overhead costs are. And we typically do not charge or projects the full cost of the overhead and the overhead and administrative costs. We are asking, we will be asking the board to approve an increase this year, which would bring it very, very close to the actual number. However, because most of our grants and contracts have basically for next year have already been established, have already either been written or negotiated, the impact on next year's budget will be considerably less. Because we're now bringing in about $4 million a year in grants and contracts, a 1% increase would equal about $40,000. So if we were to increase the PSF, our overhead charge, by 1% more, and currently it's at 13.5%. If we increased it to 14.5%, the net gain over time would be about $40,000. But for next year, because already probably 75 to 85% of our contracts are actually already been negotiated or approved for next year, for 2022. The impact would only be between $5,000 and $10,000. Is that?
Yep, thank you.
And what are the average percentages for other agencies? You said it's you have charged 13.5% now?
Yeah, and that is for everything. So the feds. So most, like when we have contracts with Mother Cabrini in New York City. They basically will allow up to 15%. The feds have, you can negotiate. I mean, of course, the Cornell's is 62%, but when they do something with, so it's basically anywhere from between, negotiated rate would be anywhere between 15 and 60%. People do have lower numbers. Our number has increased. Our percentage has increased. It was about 4 years ago, it was about 14% was our actual number, and it's now closer to 17%. And a big part of that reason is that we've basically we're paying for a lot more related to HR than we used to, and there are other admin costs that have gone up that used to be covered to some extent by campus, by Cornell administration, Cooperative Extension administration, but which has been basically outsourced to us. So our numbers have gone up, and it's currently now close to 17%.
So your costs are now about 17% for administrative costs. And did you
administrative and overhead? Yeah.
Thank you. And were you just saying that other agencies such as Cornell charge as much as 15 or 16%? You weren't saying 60%, were you?
Cornell's overhead rate is around 60.
Okay, thank you. Deborah had a question.
Yeah, this is not so much a question as a comment. I know that in the past, this PSF, it has caused a fair amount of consternation among some of my colleagues, and myself included, simply because I don't understand the distinction between the costs that are included in your operating budget and these additional administrative costs that you're billing for. And I think that, especially given the fact that lumping the county's contribution under operating expenses, it means there's not a heck of a lot of transparency or accountability with respect to those funds. And then kind of adding to the perception of, a lack of transparency of these additional administrative costs. I don't know if you can address that now, but I suggest you be prepared to address it in the budget hearings.
Okay.
So Deborah, you're saying that wanting more transparency of where actually the county money is being used versus going into one lump sum.
Yeah.
One line item.
Yeah, it means that there's not a lot of transparency. I mean, we don't know what it's being used for. And obviously, your operating budget isn't enough to cover your administrative expenses with respect to individual grants and programs. And then the thing that makes this more problematic for some of us is that I know that in the past, there's been concern about a lack of accountability, specifically with relationship to the assistant that was supposed to be hired to deal with administrative details. And Amanda, you may be able to identify that particular issue with more particularity since you are on the CCE board.
You mean the operations effectiveness manager that we have? Yeah, that's what, so when, I guess about 3.5 years ago, the county had, right before we came on, so Dave would probably remember this, had given funding, I think it was a 3-year OTR, funding for the OEM, the Operations Effectiveness Manager. And that was, I think, the first summer that I was working with CCE. And instead of hiring that person, there was, they went through the process and had a candidate that they really liked who then took another job, but they then used some of that funding for doing some consultants work. And I think that there was some confusion and some frustration from legislators, sort of unclear why that happened that way, instead of actually using the money for hiring the person that CCE said they needed. So that person was hired. Ken, you can remind me when. It's been at least a year since Karen was hired, maybe more, but.
It's been 2.5 years.
Oh,
Time flies.
Time flies. So I think that sort of was frustrating for folks, and a little bit, they had set aside money for a particular thing and it didn't get used for that. So I think what Deborah's saying is, and has been my concern in the past as well, is, we give this money, but there, and I'm on the finance committee of the CCE board, and I'm still learning and, still trying to understand it all, but the sort of lack of knowing what our money is being used for. And it is difficult when it's sort of just put into an account and, they have to buy equipment and whatever, pay for all the things that they pay for. So I'm not sure I'm helping.
No, you are. What we ended up with, I think, after that little misstep is a lack of understanding of CCE's financing, the perception that lumping it all into operations is a very not transparent practice, and the sense that if it's not transparent, if there aren't particular uses, then there isn't any real accountability for how the money's used.
And I guess I would just also add, and I'm not sure I've said this to you in the past, Ken, but, something that does give me concern as I've come to understand the CCE finances is the idea of the whole suspense account thing. And I think Dave knows what that is, but it's essentially suspense. Yes.
We're in suspense.
We're in suspense. And the way I understand it, and Ken, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that each program area, like environment and agriculture within the organization, has an account that they get funding into. I guess I don't know where the other programs get their funding, but a lot of our county money goes towards salaries. So, the agriculture area could have some county money going into it for salaries, but then what the programs can do is get a grant from some other organization, and they can get that grant into their account and take the county money and use it for something else. So, what?
I mean, I can't say I'm a fan. of that particular practice, because again, we're looking at transparency and accountability.
And I have talked with, I think I've talked with a couple of the finance committee folks about this, and I know Tracy, who's the one of the board members, who's the treasurer, I guess, of the board. She and I had talked a little bit about this, and I mean, I think it's a legal thing, but it does make it so our county, we don't know exactly what our county money is being used for, and that has been a concern. So again, that's not necessarily something that we here can do anything about, but it is being discussed a little bit on the board, but thought I'd throw that out there too.
Well,
So my takeaway on this is, I mean, because there is, and I can figure out a way to share it with the legislature or with this committee, and certainly with the board members who are on the legislatures on our board. But the takeaway is to clearly explain that suspense, because that really sounds like, when you describe it that way, it does sound like we're trying to do something with it, when it's actually the whole intent with that particular procedure, which is it's my obligation to explain it to you clearly enough, which I'll have to spend some time thinking about how to do. But the intention there is actually not to divert county money away from from what it is that you're interested in, which is interested in programming related to environment, and programming related to agriculture, and programming related to 4-H, and so on and so forth. This money is actually used to allow us to bring in more money to develop more programming than if we were to simply just use that money directly for the particular salary of a person. So for example, when we have an agriculture educator who gets paid, let's call it $50,000 a year. It's more than that, but let's just call it 50 just to make it easier. If we only paid him, and that's all he did was work in agriculture, and did not do anything else with that money other than work in agriculture, you would have one FTE from money coming into the county, or coming in from the county to our association. You'd have one FTE focused on agriculture. And but instead, because of the way the structure is set up, which is my duty to explain to you, which I'll have to do, I have to figure out a way to make it clear. But what we end up instead is we have about 6.5 FTEs working in agriculture. And my guess is that you'd prefer that than having just one. I could be wrong. So, if in fact, when I explain it to you and it's still to your end, it's like, no, we'd rather just have one person working in agriculture. Then, we certainly would follow that if that's what the county decided. So, but I think it's on me to explain it to you clearly enough that you understand, actually, this is something that's actually taking money that you're trying to put in one way and being spent in some other fashion.
Deborah Dawson has a question.
Yeah, I don't, nobody's suggesting that you're doing anything wrong. And I certainly wouldn't presume to tell you that one FTE is better than 6.5. All I'm saying is that CCE's system of accounting for money is unique in the county's experience. And I think it would go a long way if, as you say, you could explain that to us clearly so that we would be more comfortable, I think, about where our money was going. And that's really, I'm just trying to give you a heads up that I think that would be a very good thing for you to be prepared to do.
Yep.
Amanda?
Yeah, and I guess I would just add that it's my understanding that many years ago, the CCE board voted or decided that this was going to be an okay practice. And something that's come up, from numerous people in recent years since I've been involved, is that instead of, so let's say the agriculture folks, they get county money and then they get, some grants. Instead of that extra money, extra county money being used for whatever the agriculture folks wanted, it would go back into the core budget of the whole organization to support, funding lapses or other issues or, but more like the projects would, they brought in grant funding for their own projects, which is great. That's what we want them to do. But so that county money would then go back to supporting the organization structure and, giving it back to the whole instead of, oh, now I have this extra money, I'm going to do whatever I want with it.
So like a reserve fund?
Yeah, it's just a different way of looking at it. And the board, the CCE board, has wanted it to be this way for many, many years. And, I think I'm going to be advocating for the CCE board to look at it again and make a decision. And that's not something that we as a legislature could tell them what to do. We can certainly try to understand it and, give a recommendation or say, this is how we actually want our county money to be used. But there are other ways of looking at it.
So these suspense accounts are kind of like the rollover funds that we have for our county departments. And I will tell you that we are looking seriously at our rollover policy. And we've recently been encouraging departments that have substantial rollover to use them before they come ask for more money. I think there's a perception right now that the county's rolling in money. And I think nothing could be further from the truth, given what we know we're going to be facing going forward. The fact that we're still in the midst of a pandemic and nobody knows what the economic impacts are going to be. I'm just kind of giving you a heads up that at least some of us are really concerned. We don't feel like we're rolling in money. We feel like we've been given a reprieve with respect to the ARPA funds. And we do have a healthy fund balance, which got us through 2020, but we don't know what we're facing. And so I think we're going to be looking fairly closely at the OTR requests that we get and the target increases that people are asking for. And I think that the standard may be a little higher than it's been in previous years. It's just, all which is to say, it's just a heads up. Be prepared.
Oh, thank you, Annie, for having suggested this, because it's been a good conversation. Thank you. I'll go on to the next one. The second OTR is, so some of you know we've been doing a strategic planning exercise over the past year. And we also, during the pandemic, we were pretty heavily involved with this food task force. And during that time, one of the things that became very clear was the need for somebody who would be able to work, or actually the need for communities, especially in rural areas, to know what's actually available to them resource-wise. And in this particular case, we're talking primarily about mobile home parks, mobile home communities. During the pandemic, one of the things that we got quite involved with was working to organize the communities themselves to basically receive and distribute food aid. And during that process, and working with them, finding out that in fact there were a lot of things that they were actually eligible for very often that they weren't accessing, and so the we've, in addition to that, there's been some work that's been done elsewhere using university students to serve not as case managers, but as basically a resource support service. So it's been a volunteer program. It's been done with public health programs in different parts of the country, and with good demonstrated success and high impact. And so we've been doing two things. We have a program, we're part of a collective impact effort around childhood nutrition. And on that collective impact steering committee are a couple of members of the group that's working with the county health department, including one of the county health department workers, the one who's basically managing the health department's community health worker program. So has been helping to establish that. And so what's been developed is being developed is what's being perceived as a strategic complement to the health department's community health worker program, which would incorporate this student volunteer service, working with or basically being organized by a coordinator. And that's what we'd be looking for, is the funding for the coordinator position to do this work with mobile home, with students who would then be working with mobile home parks. And so this OTR is for 3-year one-time funding to basically fund that position. We've shared with the county administrator, and in our budget development process, we've shared how we think if this is successful, how we can sustain it over time. But we're asking for one-time funding over the course of 3 years to get it started. So that's what the second OTR is.
So this is reaching out to children who might have nutritional needs who live in mobile home parks?
That's one area of focus. So it's not just it's actually thinking about the social determinants of health and the resources that are available to actually help address those social determinants of health. One of which it grew out of this initial work with the Childhood Nutrition Collaborative, but it goes beyond childhood nutrition to all of the social determinants of health, and it would be focused primarily, but not solely, on the mobile home parks themselves. So if somebody isn't in a mobile home park and is expressing interest or has reached out, we wouldn't exclude them if they were in a different part of the county. But so the coordinator is actually one who would train and support the overall program, and also be interfacing themselves with mobile home parks and with sort of leadership within community leadership within mobile home parks to help sort of organize that set of leadership in their park. So the position itself has two key components. One is organization and support of leadership within the parks themselves, and the second part is supporting and developing and supporting this student resource service that would be focused on on the resources that are available connected to social determinants of health. And both of those would be done in close consultation with the community health worker program that the health department's been developing.
Amanda has a question.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. I feel like this is the first I'm hearing about this, which is totally fine. But I'm like, which programs would this person work with? I'm just unclear, like, where they fit into your structure. They're not like an admin person.
No, it's a program person So there is a program person currently whose full-time work is with the Child Nutrition Collaborative. And that program is located in the nutrition and health program area.
Okay.
And so this person would be basically a companion position to that particular position in that program.
Okay. And then after the 3-year one-time funding, would they be ideally getting their own grants to keep the thing going, or is it just a 3-year plan?
It's no, so ideally they would be, so there's, so part of this is being developed with Cornell's public health, Masters in Public Health program. So a part of this would be working with them right from the beginning on identifying and developing with them funding streams for this position. It's in their interest as well, because it lets their students actually get the kind of direct field work that would be helpful for them. And then there is also several other revenue streams being used by these other programs elsewhere, one of which is the insurance companies and Medicaid itself. I don't know if you're familiar with, there's some current programs that are basically based on and now I'm getting out past where I can actually talk about this with any real knowledge, so I'll stop.
That's fine, thank you.
Yeah.
I
But
have
yeah.
a couple of questions. First of all, how much is this OTR for?
50,000 a year.
15,000.
50.
50, okay. And have you talked to Cornell and its NPH program about funding some of this?
Yeah, that's what, yeah, I just said that we're working with them. We don't anticipate getting much funding in the first year to 2 years of this, but we do anticipate that as the program, as we start getting students, from Cornell involved in it, that they themselves are talking in terms of being able to support it to some extent.
Okay, thank you.
All right. The third one is a revisit of the classroom, the classroom that we had actually gotten contingent funding for back in 2018 going into 2019. And so this is to build a standalone quote unquote dirty classroom that lets, that where we would be teaching composting classes and gardening classrooms where there's a lot of dirt and soil, et cetera, in the classes. And so rather than bringing it into the building, to the main building, it would be set up as a separate classroom. And so we did get, as I said, contingent funding before. That was also at the time that we actually had to turn our attention primarily to the roof. And so, because the roof had a portion of the roof had collapsed. So we did not proceed with that year. We still have the building permit for it. And so we're coming back at seeking funding to reinstate this, to put this, to construct this, the classroom. So it does meet a long-term need. We've wanted to have something and needed something, as many of you know, we lack for meeting room space. Now we'll add a hybrid teaching component to this so that we can basically do both on-site as well as remote teaching there. And it will be high performance building in terms of, it'll be super insulated. It'll have a small heat pump system. The building itself will be about 1,400 feet, and we can actually put in It'll be set up to operate with the smallest heat pump, a 1-ton heat pump. It'll be built so that it's flood resilient. In other words, it'll actually be almost flood resistant because it'll be built off the ground. So it'll be built above flood, 100-year floodplain level. It is a low cost approach to addressing space needs. We need meeting room space. We particularly need dirty classroom space, but in fact, the space can be used not just for dirty classroom, it can be used for any classroom. So it basically gives us a significant additional meeting space at a much lower cost than if we were to try to do it inside. And we are seeking one-time funding for that. And it's $100,000 that we're seeking. The building itself will be, the estimates are between 120 and 130, and we will be raising the rest of it, the other 20 to 30.
Amanda, I wanted to ask something.
Yeah, thanks again. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a great idea and certainly needed. I know that it has been talked about for some time, and there were plans to do it a couple of years ago. And did the legislature give money for it previously?
The legislature approved a contingent amount back in 2018 to 2019. Back in 2018, it was when you voted on it, and we just didn't. We weren't able to take advantage of it at that time.
Okay. And I think what you said was, sorry, never mind. I'm good. Thank you.
I had, just since you mentioned the building permit, but aren't they usually only good for a year or two? And this, you're talking about 2018.
Yeah. I talked with the city again last week about it. They said it's still open, you can still do it.
Okay.
But I don't know if they're being kind because of COVID or what, but I do expect my suspicion is we'll still need to come back and do something. But the point there is that it's been approved. We will proceed before the end of September. We'll come back with a stronger sort of confirmation than what I just said. But the point is, it does appear to be. I mean, the city does seem to be completely fine with it. And I've revisited with the architect. He basically thinks. He too thinks it won't be an issue. He's addressed the concerns, that they had from back when we were first designing it. And he revisited it again with me last week, and he thinks it won't be a problem either. So.
Okay, thank you.
And the last one is we've had a food system planning OTR that we've been serving as the pass-through for the Food Policy Council. I think Don Barber is on, so we've had this. We had the county gave us $20,000. Gave the Food Policy Council $20,000 for 2 years. It was one-time funding, which was the request was for 2 years. It would be a third year at $20,000 of one-time funding. The intention would be to do these. So this is a slide that was actually shared last year or the year before. I can't remember. And so the funding that at that time was intended to hire a part-time staff person, which we did. They've gathered data. They've arranged focus groups. There have been interviews. They've compiled findings. They are in the process now of developing a baseline draft report. And so there's been a steering committee. They've been engaging key informants. They've been, as I said, convening focus groups, and they've compiled existing data. They're at the stage now where they're summarizing findings. And the next part of this is what's in yellow, which would be to work with stakeholders and draft. So using the baseline, draft goals and recommendations, and then share the plan out with community for final input. Share it with the county and get the county's endorsement. And then also begin the effort of implementation with a primary focus in the early stages of during 2022 of resource acquisition. So really looking, okay, we've got these recommendations, we've got this plan in place. Now let's start looking. Let's not start looking. Let's basically increase the effort to identify resources that we can use for this plan. And so we're at the stage now, as I said, they're in development right now of the baseline plan, the baseline reports, which out of that then come, here's the situation, here's what are the goals, what are the recommendations that we have for changing this baseline into something that we want for the county. And then that plan, which will be developed with stakeholders, that plan would then be shared back out more broadly for final input from across the county. Would share with the legislature, get the county legislature's endorsement, and then and be out looking for resources for it.
Right, and then Baz Perry came and gave us a detailed presentation last month in July, and
Right. Correct.
And they're going to come to the I believe it's the September 17th legislature meeting to do a presentation. Deborah, you had a question?
Yeah, I have several about this. First of all, I want to compliment your people that have been working on this. And Don Barber, they have been assiduous about keeping us informed of progress and their needs. Can I ask, the next slide says OTR 64. It's 64 OTRs or is this a typo?
That OTR 64 is the
real, Ken.
that was the OTR number when this was request was made, and this particular slide was developed. So I kept it in on purpose because I wanted you to know this is something that's actually been requested, and that the legislature has supported throughout the process.
Right, because otherwise, we'll need more time on the agenda if you have 60 more or 50 more.
Well, I guess my suggestion here is, given what we've heard from the folks who've been working on this throughout the last couple of years, my understanding is that it's not surprising that there's been a delay in this process, and I certainly don't mind supporting the money that it's going to take to finish it. I also got the impression from Baz's presentation at our last meeting that there would be additional requests for county funding for implementation. And I guess my feeling is I don't understand why these particular needs are not prioritized more highly, given that this is a process that's well on its way to being finished and of course should be finished. There are sunk costs associated here. And I certainly personally would prioritize these more highly than your OTR 2 and 3.
I just wanted to say, I thought Baz had said at the presentation that there was going to be other funding that they might not need to come back to us for funding. But
Yeah,
there might
but
be other
it's still a
sources.
possibility.
It's a possibility.
And I thought that they definitely would need the additional $20,000 to finish
For this one, right, absolutely. So what do you think about that, Ken, as far as Deborah's comment about prioritization?
So for me, it's I guess I'd actually need to go back to my board because we're serving as a pass-through on this, right? I mean, the Food Policy Council is receiving this. I mean, it's coming to us, and we are certainly supportive of it. And so, it would be if it's saying so the reason why this is fourth and the reason why it was the last one last year wasn't because we don't think it's a priority, but it's primarily because we're serving as the fiscal sponsor for this. We're serving as a fiscal entity that's managing this. And so yes, it is a priority for us. Yeah, go, Don, you've got your hand up. Feel free. Right.
Sure, I will just echo Ken's comment that Cooperative Extension is just a fiscal sponsor for this, that whenever the pitch was made to the county legislature 2 years ago, the Food Policy Council made the pitch, and we noted that we would need a fiscal sponsor because we're not a 501c3 or any kind of other governmental organization. And so CCE stepped up to be our fiscal sponsor. So I'm not sure this fits in their spending pattern that they would have to make it a priority. And I also want to make sure that we understand that this is not additional funding to complete the work that was started 2 years ago. This is funding for the next phase. So we fully expect to have a plan put together and brought to the county legislature by May of 2022. And then that we already know from the work that we've done that there will be work that needs to happen at most levels of municipal government, city, county, and towns and villages. And we are looking for a staff person to help us get that message to them and supply them the information that each municipality needs. There also, we learned from the COVID work that was done that this Food Policy Council supported also, that there are a number of systems that need to be come to fruition. And one of them is a food dashboard, which helps people understand where not only consumers, but also producers and retailers, where the local food system is at, where the food is coming from, and how we can engage each other, what our needs are and what our resources are. So creating that food dashboard is something that Baz Perry has started, but actually making that come to fruition, we would need some support to make that happen. So that's another part of what would happen next year. And lastly, we've been connecting with several food policy councils around the country, and one of them is Lewiston, Austin, Auburn, I can say this right, Lewiston, Auburn, Maine. And they have created what they call a good food charter, and they go around the community. And we would actually begin this during our outreach to put our plan together, to have folks endorse the plan that we have. And then with that, also find sponsors. And they've been able to, in Lewiston, Auburn, to find, after several years, enough funding for a full-time staff person. And we're looking to model on their strategy so that this is the last time we come to the county legislature for funding, and that we would actually create our own self-funding model as we raise the awareness of the food system in Tompkins County, its impact on the environment and our economy and on our health. So that's the reason for this funding, and we're looking for, again, one-time funding, and that this would complete implementation of the plan and bringing it to fruition.
So I guess I'm less clear than I was about what this $20,000 is for. Because my understanding was that it didn't include does it or does it not include the stuff that's in yellow on slide 7?
So my answer would be it does not include any of the work on slide 7. The work on slide 7 has been paid for by the county and by the Community Foundation of Tompkins County. And so we have funding enough available to complete all that work. And that's our plan. So the over target request is strictly for what's on the following slide number 9.
Slide number what?
8.
Slide number 9. This is what the funding that we're asking for.
All right. Well, let's hope that this gets clarified before the budget hearings, please.
Yes. We can do that.
Did you say, Don, a food dashboard? And what would that be exactly?
So it's called a dashboard. And there are several examples around. Actually, Tompkins County does participate in a regional one right now. And Ken was able to bow out that this was beyond his wheelhouse. I will say the same thing. Baz Perry, who you presented last meeting, is working on it. She's the coordinator that Cooperative Extension has designated to work on the regional basis, and is most adept to answer technical questions on it. But I will say that it collects data on food that's being produced in Tompkins County, food that's being consumed in Tompkins County, resources such as SNAP and other funding sources, and coordinates and makes people aware of CSAs and farmers markets. So that it's a general dashboard of the food activity within Tompkins County that's maintained on a very consistent basis. So it's live information. It's not stuff that we produce once a year and then hope that it's valid all year long, because the food system is dynamic and changing depending upon the time of year.
I think she's also mentioned food pantries too. So it'd be like a one-stop place where you could go instead of, okay, I have this type of income and I'm looking for this, or I have transportation and I'm looking for this. It's just one stop, and so it's to help people who are looking for food, and also farmers.
Yeah, sorry, I missed the previous peak meeting, so I didn't hear that presentation. Sorry.
Anything else? So I guess I had one question for our committee here. And I guess it's also for Ken. So for the committee members, is there anything else that you want to clarify that you'd like to make sure that Ken brought back it sounds like we're going to want Ken to come back to the extended budget committee.
Right.
So that sounds like that's going to have to happen. So sorry about that, Ken, to come twice, but I think this is going to help, it's helped clarifying some of our questions. Is there anything else you want from Ken, or Ken, do you have any questions from us on what would help clarify things? Amanda?
Well, I have not so much to answer that question, what you just said, but I have another question.
Go ahead.
Okay. Ken, I haven't heard yet if you all are in the process of the 2020 audit, and how is that going?
Oh, we haven't gotten anything back yet. So we don't have any further information. I actually checked in with Tracy today in case she had heard anything, and she had not either. So.
Okay, but Joanne has been working with them, or what? I guess I'm not sure where the audit stands at this point. I haven't talked to Joanne.
Yeah, you're talking about the Cornell compliance piece?
No, sorry, just your regular.
The external audit. So the external audit, the external audit, the auditors are actually supposed to. They were gonna start with us in August. So I sent a text to them on Friday, and Joanne was out until today, and I sent her an email this morning saying that if I hadn't heard back from the auditors, because they were going to get back to us in August, and so I just wanted to see when they were going to actually, when they're going to start looking at our book for 2020.
Okay. I know that last year, well, the 2018 audit we didn't get until 2020, or CC
Correct.
board didn't get until 2020. So I hope that this one won't take 2 years as well.
Yeah, well, and so do I.
Anything else from Ken or from our committee that would help clarify anything, or other questions?
No, I just appreciate that he came and gave us this opportunity to assist him in honing his presentation for the expanded budget committee.
Yeah.
And Katrina, do we have other legislators on here?
Yeah, Henry.
Henry, do you have any, I think Martha was on earlier, but she's not there. Henry, do you have any questions?
Looks like his hand's up.
His hand's up, but I don't have him where he's. I can't pay him to a panel, so something he has to do on his own.
Oh, now he's gone,
Right.
along with his hand.
No, no,
Maybe he's gonna try and go back in.
now he's a panelist, so.
Okay,
Okay.
so Henry, if you can,
No.
go ahead.
I have no questions.
No questions. All right, thank you. All right, well, thank you very much, Ken, for coming today. And I guess one last thing is the slide where you had the bar graph. Would you mind correcting those and then send those to us again? And
Yes, sir.
so that they can go to the legislators, because I did send your presentation out to all the legislators.
Okay. Yeah, I'll get that to you today.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you much. Take care all. Thanks so much for taking the time. I appreciate the effort. And I will certainly address those issues that you raised. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ken, and thank you,
Thank
Don.
you.
All right.
You're good.
I'll stop sharing here. Yeah.
Okay, next we have a resolution abolishing the homeownership oversight committee and the local empire zone administration board. Amanda moves that. We have a second. Dave. Okay, so it doesn't look like we have anybody from the planning
I can explain.
committee here. Oh, great. Amanda's going to give us a rundown.
Yeah, just, so in Government Operations Committee, something that we've been talking about is looking at all of our advisory boards and helping our clerks with trying to consolidate and get folks, and looking at the whole big picture and analyzing how we can make it more time efficient for them. It takes them hours and hours and hours to deal with all the advisory boards. So one of the simplest things that we realized that we could do, there was about four advisory boards that no longer meet. And Kathy said, and Brittany said that the easiest thing to do would be just get rid of them. So they don't even have them on their books anymore. They don't have to deal with, time terms and, whatever, all that stuff. So I guess these are two, and she did check with Katie or somebody at planning to have it go through them instead of going through GO, because it's really up to the department if they even need these boards anymore. So that's what I could tell you. I don't know specifically about these boards other than what's in the resolution, but I do know that these were two that we were hoping to get rid of.
I can say that the homeownership oversight committee was the one that supervised that program where we were
First-time home buyers.
We were making loans to first-time home buyers, and you'll remember that we had to juggle things around so that we could assign that money to
Right.
other uses. So that program's dead.
Right.
And I don't know about the Empire Zone, but if the incentive program sunsetted 11 years ago, we probably ought to get rid of it.
Yeah, I don't think they even have members or meetings.
So it seems like this is a housekeeping item. Any other questions or comments before we vote? Okay, those in favor? That's unanimous. And do we have any committee member reports?
I have a question. Has anybody, Amanda, I don't know if you had a chance to look at it at GO, but I'm trying to remember if the case board was a 2-year or a 3-year project, because if it was just 2 years,
Oh,
I think we're going to have to pass something to continue it. It's been extremely useful.
I don't know anything about it.
So do I
We'll
have
put
to-
that on our tipware.
Kathy about that, so we'd have to do.
I can look at their initial
Okay.
resolution. I've got it.
Katrina's gonna check and see what we need to do to continue them into next year. Okay, and if we can do it this year, that they don't have a lapse. Yeah, they've been really a useful committee's done a lot of great work too. So I think, and Deborah, you were instrumental in starting that. So I really appreciate that. I just think now, like, how did we not have them before? I will mention that the EMC, Environmental Management Council, their upcoming meeting, they're regrouping a little bit. So at the next meeting, as far as like looking at, you know, what goals do they want to have? How do they want to structure their committees and things like that? So they're going to be looking at that at their next meeting. I think it's September 9th. And they asked me to come to make sure I was there to talk about, make sure that their goals interface more with what we're doing. So you're welcome to attend. They're struggling with having their meeting in person or not. So I helped, you know, clarify that, you know, with Jonathan. And legally, the EMC has to meet in person. They're pushing, they're asking again, they sent an email again asking with Anna Kelles if anything can be done with that. And yeah, I'll just get you a sec. Then, so Anna Kelles' office answered back that yes, you know, there's been some bills on that, but they're kind of dead in the water, and plus the legislature is not in session. So unless, you know, I would imagine the new governor passes something that suspends open meeting laws for all, then they're gonna have to meet in person. And they're also looking, did you have something on that part, or go ahead?
Well, just about the EMC, and because I was in communication with Reggie also, talking about some of their subcommittees, and she was asking me to come, but I think their meeting is on one of our budget meetings.
That one on that date that got canceled.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah, because I had something before, right up overlapping the beginning, and then both things got canceled.
You'll recall things got moved back because it's taking a little longer for admin to put together its budget.
So we
proposal.
don't have a EDC on the 9th?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, because they're not presenting the budget to us, administration, until the week next after that.
Right.
All right, I missed that part. So great. So I probably will be at the EDC.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I don't think EBC starts until the 14th, does.
14th is when.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So that's great if you can help make it to that. And they also, it's their 50th anniversary of the EMC. And so they wanted to know about possibly planting a tree in honor of that. And so I've been working with them. They're trying to figure out if that's going to be a possibility. There's a number of pieces of information they need to get first. And so we'll see if, and then part of that would be finding out how much it would cost. One of the places that they looked into is Stewart Park, since they had a recent storm of replacing one tree there. And so it would need to be, they need to figure out, can they actually do that? So they're looking into that process. And then we'd have to see how much it costs, and then where we would, you know, get that money, or if we could get that money. So anyway, we're looking into that, but I told them it's kind of hard to ask for that money if I don't know how much it is. It's going to be $200. It's going to be $2,000. So stay tuned for that, but I'd like to support them with that, to plant a tree. Deborah?
Well, you had your hand up first. Well, this is an item of interest to our Water Resources Council and our and the Cayuga Lake Watershed IO. This is a story that I saw on a health website on Monday night. Oh, by the way, I just got a message from Terry Carroll. Cases for 2 years, so we do have to renew them before the end of this year. Thanks, Terry.
Oh, it's been 2 years already?
Yeah, we remember their first year was 2020, and they were they met in blatant defiance of the county administrator's edict that we weren't going to have advisory boards meeting.
Terry must be watching on
Yeah.
YouTube. Hi, Terry.
Okay, so let me read this. On Monday night, authorities started searching for 3 missing people in California. Shortly after the search began, the family's vehicle was found in Mariposa County, California, and the bodies of the missing individuals, in addition to their dog, were found nearby. The family were found on a hiking trail in the Sierra National Forest. A spokesperson for the county sheriff's office said, "This is a very unusual, unique situation. There were no signs of trauma, no obvious cause of death, and no suicide note. Now authorities are questioning whether toxic algae blooms were responsible for the deaths." Per the Associated Press, the bodies of the deceased have been transported to the Mariposa coroner's office so they can be autopsied, and toxicology exams can be conducted, and the State Water Resources Control Board announced it was testing local waterways for toxic algae blooms. They're unsure what the cause of death is still, but they do note that the algae blooms were due to a recent drought. The Sierra National Forest had shared information on its Facebook page in July regarding water testing results that showed, quote, "a high concentration of algae blooms," close quote. So this particular issue is something we ought to be paying attention to because it may be even more serious than we thought.
Go ahead.
Can't let a meeting go by without talking about HABs. So that the HAB subcommittee of the Water Resources Council met, and we're talking about HABs in ponds. I guess you can get HABs in your private pond, and so soil and water folks are getting lots and lots of calls, seeing if they can get tests for their ponds. I think that, so there was some conversation, Elizabeth Cameron was there from the Department of Health, and she said, people can call them. I guess they're not getting calls. I guess folks are calling soil and water, but the Department of Environmental Health does have a HABs person and who knows about that. And so people, if they want to ask questions about their private pond, they can call Department of Health. I think there was some confusion, and I probably won't say the right thing, but of where people can get a test. We weren't sure if the Community Science Institute would do a test for somebody's private pond. They generally are just doing like the lake. So I guess I don't really have an answer for that, but just people should be aware that if you have a pond out back, you could get HABs on it, get a HAB on it. And as always, before you go swimming up at Teganic or whatnot, you should definitely check and call ahead and see if it's open. So.
Amy, if you're still listening, that might be something worth Dominic's attention. I know that there's a lot going on with COVID, but if people are getting HABs in ponds, they should know who to call and what to do. So just a suggestion.
I can reach out. I mean, Darby is the sort of leader of our HABs committee. I can reach out to her and Dominic and maybe say, can we put out a press release about that, or
I'll put it on our Facebook pages. And
I would never. Well, I wouldn't say I would never think, but I just kind of mostly think my pond is immune, and I might not even walk around the whole thing before I jumped in to go swimming. Or
a lot of people don't even know what it looks like. I mean, I'm not sure I could identify it. Like, it's not just algae. There's a particular kind that's toxic. So it's right. You don't.
And clearly more toxic than we knew.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
people can have their pets
Well,
go out.
a lot of animals have been
Yeah.
made very sick or died from swimming
Yeah.
in algae blooms.
But, 2 adults and their child, that's tragic.
Okay.
And on that cheery note,
Well, I'll end, just wanted to say that, we're seeing, emergencies, flood emergencies happen in different parts of the state, different counties. luckily we weren't hit by Henri as hard as we thought and got downgraded. I was watching that because I have family in New York City, but plus, you know, I know water it can do extensive damage and kill a lot of people. So I'm glad New York didn't get it too bad. Although I haven't heard a lot of stories of how bad Long Island was, because I know they took at least a good portion of the front of that. And so far we escaped that, but several counties around us, you know, Subban was one of them who had flooding, has been declared a state of emergency. And I don't know if there's any other counties around us. I don't know. But anyway, and it's a national issue too. So the county is working on our resiliency plan. So anything else before we end today?
I got one
Dave?
question for you. The Tesla's float?
The Tesla's float. I have seen videos where they float a little bit. They don't recommend
Not like Volkswagen.
Volkswagen float.
Oh, yeah, that, when I was in college, I hesitate to share this. There was a commercial about how the Volkswagen bugs were like airtight. And one of the fraternities at Cornell, who shall remain nameless, actually decided to test this out by driving one of their members' cars into their swimming pool. So.
Okay, what they were smoking. On Saturday, as part of the Trumansburg Fair, they always have a big parade. So on Saturday is the parade, and they're having this year for the first time a big sustainable contingent in that. So I was asked to drive our electric car, and they also specifically asked for Terry Carroll if he could join us. So I had reached out to him, so he's going to look into that. And he said he thought maybe he could possibly drive he has an electric tractor. So I want to follow up with that. It's all garden tractor, and I have an electric lawn tractor. So I want to see if we have the same kind so anyway, so come to the Trumansburg Fair and see me and maybe Terry waving from a Tesla or an electric tractor or something like that.
Maybe floating down.
Or, right, maybe we'll simulate, you know, a pool with a VW bug floating in there. All right, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming today, and we'll see you next month.